I don't like. I wanted the Minnesota Vikings, so I'm not for either team. So I don't care about the Super Bowl. But I'll tell you what I do care about: that guy hitting the pole. Yeah. That was like Durbin today. That was like boom.
Apparently,
boom.
Do you like how we slowed it down? We're so mean. We slowed it down.
It's like the $6 million man.
But we got to have a Super Bowl bet. Have your bet ready tomorrow. I'm taking the Patriots and Brady.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to bet up against Brady. The guy always wins. Forget it. And he has perfect hair. What else? What can you do? Just like you,
Winning.
Sean.
He has perfect hair. Everyone hates him. He has a beautiful wife. He has the perfect team. He's got the best coach, the best owner. They love him. They hate him.
All right, Sean, thank you so much as always. Everybody, I'm Laura Ingraham. Welcome to the Ingraham Angle. I'm tongue-tied from Washington. We have a huge show for you tonight, including my response to MSNBC and Chuck Schumer trying to pin blame on moi for the shutdown. Wait for it. But first, Trump shuts down the Democrats, the real truth about what the public thinks about immigration, and where, oh where did all those FBI text messages go? That's the focus of tonight's breaking news angle. Seeing the looks on some Democrats' faces today after the government was reopened was thoroughly entertaining. I was smiling all day long. Di-Fi looked like she ate something bad in the Senate dining room. And Disturbin' Durbin looked like he swallowed Bob Corker. Look at him. Donald Trump and the Republican leadership outsmarted them again. It's Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. The idiotic move by Chuck Schumer to shut down the government to help illegal immigrants was wildly unpopular, and he quickly felt the white-hot heat from the public. Even by Friday, more Americans understood the truth, that liberals in Washington put the interests of DACA people ahead of the well-being of our men and women in the armed forces. Now, think about it this way. Imagine being deployed in Afghanistan. Maybe you're on your multiple deployments. You're away from your family for several months, and then you find out that the fools on the Hill are more worried about illegal aliens than about you and your family. That must feel really good. It's disgraceful. All it took was McConnell promising to work on the immigration issue until February 8th, and if nothing was resolved by then, to have a free and open debate on immigration, including a DACA fix.
It ends the shutdown and restores full funding for the federal government through February the 8th.
If an agreement isn't reached by February the 8th, the Senate will immediately proceed to consideration of legislation dealing with DACA.
Ooh, big win, Chuck. The Boston Globe's Matt Visor summed it up this way in a tweet. He said, Democrats have managed to accede to Republican demands, demoralize their energized base, give a disengaged president a win, and look like they held a meaningless 3-day government shutdown all at once. I couldn't have summed it up better myself. And before the shutdown, the Democrats' dream of taking back power, it was already slowly fading away because of the roaring stock market and the strength of the overall economy. So now what do our left-wing friends across politics and the media do to save face?
Just a fool, like he's just an idiot, like he's a stupid old blubbery man who doesn't know what he's doing.
The president was not involved these past few days. Despite that, they've reached this compromise.
The president doesn't have a good sense of his governing style.
This is the second time his staff has basically had to trick him into watching TV and tweeting instead of being hands-on after he bungled it by being hands-on.
I'm watching Nicole Wallace, and I keep thinking it's Mika Brzezinski. I can't. They're all becoming one person now when I'm watching them. Now, it's amazing how many of the same fanatics, by the way, have been trying to ram through amnesty since 2006. Think of them. It's Graham, Schumer, and Durbin, all back, the three amigos. Now, the president has got to be very careful in the coming days and weeks not to allow the foxes into the henhouse as the debate moves forward. You think about it. Republicans could not rid us of Obamacare last year after all those votes that they had when it didn't matter. But now, by golly, they're obsessed with helping illegal immigrants, and they're going to get it done. As for Democrats, they just want to repeal and replace those blue-collar Americans who voted for Trump with new immigrants who'll vote for Democrats. The president has got to hold firm, and I think he will. No chain migration, no visa lottery, real funding for the wall, not just authorization, but appropriations, and then, I guess, maybe do the DACA thing. You have all the leverage. Don't give it to the politicians, Mr. President, who don't respect you or your supporters. And by the way, there's some more evidence that Trump is more in the mainstream on immigration than Lindsay or Chuck will ever be. Check out this new Harvard-Harris poll that just came out. It tells a really good tale. 65% versus 35% support a DACA deal that ends chain migration, eliminates the visa lottery, and secures the border with a wall. 68% of respondents oppose the visa lottery. 81% want to see legal immigration levels slashed. You heard it, slashed. 79% think immigration should be based on skills rather than family ties. And 60% believe dreamers should not be given preference to bring their relatives to the United States. 61% think current border security is inadequate. 54% support a physical barrier along the southern border. And a whopping 79% want secure borders rather than open borders. Well, facts never got in the way of these open borders Republicans before, but maybe we can hope that Lindsey Graham, Jeff Flake, and the others get the message. Meanwhile, we stay on the corruption watch as we learn today that the FBI somehow managed to lose 5 months worth of texts. And I was shocked, I tell you, to have found out that the only texts the FBI failed to preserve were messages between that anti-Trump FBI investigator Peter Strzok and his paramour, FBI attorney Lisa Page. Now remember, both worked on the Mueller and Clinton email investigations. And it was during that key period between December 2016 through May 2017 that the Bureau claims a technical problem with updating software caused the failure to preserve these messages. So are you saying that it's just like when we get stuff on our iPhone or you want the update and we always say no because we don't want the phone to slow down? Is that what happened? This is ridiculous. It's the FBI. If you believe their explanation here, I have a pet rock I want to sell you. And by the way, I loved my pet rock when it came out. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has got to step in now. I know he recused himself, and that was, frankly, not necessary, from the FBI Russia investigation. But now we need an independent review of all of this monkey business. There's too much to explain away. By the way, we have a lot more on that coming up. You do not want to move because it's hot tonight. The show is hot. Including, by the way, the gradual push to release the House Intel memo and the FBI warrant abuse that we've been talking about for days on the show. There's new news on that. But there is other huge economic news today that I've got to get to that's going to be overlooked by everybody in the media, but not here. Once again, we'll show that President Trump is fulfilling the promises that he made.
We will stand up to trade cheating. Cheaters, that's what they are, cheaters. We will stand up to trade cheating. Anywhere and everywhere it threatens the American job.
The U.S. Trade Rep's office just announced that it will grant relief in the form of major tariffs against imported solar cells and modules, as well as large residential washing machines. Trump trade chief Bob Lighthizer cited Section 201 in the Trade Act of 1974, a law that gives the president discretionary authority to grant relief if the International Trade Commission finds that imports have been a substantial cause of serious injury. The real finding here. There had been a pattern of unfair trade practices going on for years, and this is the first time this law provided any relief since the early 2000s. Great news. Now, can you imagine Obama ever doing this? Or, frankly, Hillary Clinton? Well, Hillary Clinton would have never done it because it was her husband. The U.S. Trade Rep's office just announced that it will grant relief in the form of major tariffs against imported solar cells and modules, as well as large residential washing machines. Trump trade chief Bob Lighthizer cited Section 201 in the Trade Act of 1974, a law that gives the president discretionary authority to grant relief if the International Trade Commission finds that imports have been a substantial cause of serious injury. The real finding here. There had been a pattern of unfair trade practices going on for years, and this is the first time this law provided any relief since the early 2000s. Great news. Now, can you imagine Obama ever doing this? Or, frankly, Hillary Clinton? Well, Hillary Clinton would have never done it because it was her husband back in 2000 who thought it was such a great idea for China to join the WTO. Remember, Obama did use tariffs once on tires, but that was only directed at China. Trump's tariffs apply to a large number of countries engaged in this abuse. Now, of course, today's trade enforcement action was greeted by the usual globalist hair on fire reporting. It's all wrong, but it's so predictable. Again, this pattern of unfair trade practices in major industries, and this is just the beginning, is obscene. And oftentimes, even when we go to the World Trade Organization, the World Trade Court, and they judge in our favor, the offending countries do not rectify the damage, and the damage to American companies is already done by the time they get any relief. Well, I'll tell you this. On trade, on immigration, so many issues, there is truly a new sheriff in town. And we're putting American industry first, American workers first, the American people first. And it's about time. And that's the angle. Joining us now from here in Washington is Hogan Gidley. He's the White House Deputy Press Secretary for President Trump. It's great to see you. How are you? Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks
Absolutely.
for the time.
Oh, I won't quiz you on trade, but I am going to get into what's happening on the fact that we have the shutdown is over.
Right.
But now it's on to this February 8th deadline for passing some kind of DACA. Now, Lindsey Graham, Jeff Flake, and Dick Durbin, the three of them, they want a plan that they tried to foist on the president that a senior House member tonight, very senior, told me would never even be brought up for a vote, Hogan.
Right. It would never be brought up. That's what I'm hearing as well. And if it ever got to the president's desk, it would never be signed. The president was very clear. We all got to see the 55-minute show with the bipartisan bicameral meeting in the cabinet room. Coming out of that, the president said, for my national security package, I need four things. That is border security with a wall, ending chain migration, ending the visa lottery, and a lasting solution for DACA.
Well, Luis Gutierrez over the weekend said we gave him the money for his stinking wall. That he had the money. He didn't really care about, he cares about the wall, but we gave him that. What is the real truth about that? Not true. In fact, the Graham-Durbin bill didn't cover any of the things the president outlined that he wanted. In fact, it made the situation much worse. It increased illegal immigration. It granted amnesty to upwards of 8 million people. It did not fund the wall, and it kept chain migration going. And real quickly, the Migration Policy Institute says we have about 3.25 million people here that are dreamers and DACA recipients that would have received amnesty. Graham and Durbin also in the bill wanted their parents to receive 3 years in the country, and then once they were all here, they gave them the right for chain migration as well. So you're talking about 8 million, 10 million people by the time it's all said and done. It was absolutely incredible. Now, President Trump won in about 3 different states. It was Wisconsin, Ohio, I think Pennsylvania, I think that's right. But about 80,000 votes gave him the election. Sure. Now, you're talking millions of new voting American citizens, many of them probably beholden to the Democrats. What does that mean for the Republican Party? Look, you'll remember when Ronald Reagan actually did give amnesty, I don't think he got but 30% of any of the folks that came here through the amnesty package then. The president is completely opposed to this package. Graham and Durbin both were negotiating with him. And Flake as well. They brought it to the president. They promised him it did everything he wanted. And the border piece, the wall piece, as we just talked about, DHS did a study and said we need, not want, but we need $18 billion for the wall. This was less than 1/10 of that. They were talking about $1.6 billion for the wall. It didn't fund a thing. Graham and Durbin know it, and now the lid's been blown off and everyone sees them for what they are. I want to play a soundbite for you, and we're going to get back to Lindsey Graham because he's driving the bus on this. Absolutely. And I want to talk more about that. But they're blaming Stephen Miller That's their new target. It was, Bannon, and they go through the list. Now it's Stephen Miller. Let's watch.
Stephen Miller is the reason that the president backed away from that immigration decision.
They're not going to get there by this path of allowing essentially Stephen Miller and Tom Cotton to be, in charge of all the policy in the United States.
The reason we yank these things back is because Mr. Miller, his view of immigration has never been in the mainstream of the Senate.
Trump rocks the baseball cap. Lindsey doesn't work. Sorry, just doesn't work for him. God bless him. All right, so now it's Stephen Miller's the big boogeyman. I mean, they're shifting, but the Stephen Miller running policy, running all the immigration policy. The president just doesn't know what's going on. That's the other thing they're saying.
Right, they're trying to have it both ways.
And Lindsey Graham has said this repeatedly about Miller, about Cotton, about Perdue. He's attacking all of them, and in a few minutes I'm going to explain why they're attacking me too. But go ahead.
No question. And look, I know Stephen Miller very well. I've worked with him now for the 3 months I've been in the White House, and we spend a lot of time together. Stephen Miller serves at the pleasure of the president, as do I. What Stephen Miller was hired to do is execute what the president wants done. This is the president's plan. It's not Stephen Miller's plan, and Lindsey Graham knows that, and there's no reason for him to call out. In fact, there's no daylight between Donald Trump and Stephen Miller on immigration. Neither is there any daylight between Dick Durbin and Lindsey Graham on open.
Why does Lindsey Graham get to go on television and claim there's a bipartisan deal that the president rejected when it's Graham and Flake? Graham and Flake, and then you throw in Susan Collins. Again, I'm sure they're all really nice people. They do not track the president's views on immigration. You saw that poll. That Harvard-Harris poll, Hogan, shows that the American people want immigration levels, even legal immigration levels, reduced. The president is squarely in the mainstream. Lindsey Graham is a radical fanatic on amnesty. He has been for more than 10 years. Frankly, I'm being harsh here, but that's a fact.
A quick anecdote. He is on the fringe on this. The polls show it. But look, I was in South Carolina. I'm from there. He was my senator. I was executive director of the South Carolina Republican Party. At our state convention, 2,000 Republicans booing Lindsey Graham for his stance on immigration because he wants open borders and amnesty. He always has, and it's his right to have that position. But don't pretend as though you had to have a meeting of the minds with Dick Durbin and you gave up something to get something. You guys, Dick Durbin and Lindsey Graham and Jeff Flake, have been on the same page on this policy for decades.
Hogan, thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely.
Really
thank you, too.
And the trade quiz is coming later. By the way, there was a curious development during the shutdown, one I know that some of you saw because you tweeted me about it. MSNBC and Chuck Schumer on different occasions going after yours truly for holding the line, as I have for many, many years, on illegal immigration.
The Republicans in the House have been, and it depends on where you sit, some people would say supported by, others would say terrorized by news outlets like Breitbart, like Laura Ingraham.
Terrorizing? Ooh. Now, tell me she's not calling me out for terrorizing House members. I just say, when was the last time Casey Hunt mentioned the illegal immigrants who actually do terrorize American citizens? We're going to get to this in a few segments, MS-13 and what they're doing to areas right outside of D.C. Roving gangs of hardened, ruthless criminals who are terrorizing American citizens. When offenders with multiple deportations stop re-entering the country and terrorizing our people, that's when I'll stop terrorizing congressmen about the issue. Thank you very much. And speaking of terror, Chuck Schumer actually suggested that the president was about to sign on to the Graham-Durbin DACA deal until big bad Laura showed up.
The hard right came after him. Breitbart called him Amnesty Trump. Laura Ingraham even insisted he be impeached. By the weekend, he had backed off.
Not only has he been embarrassed today with his political ineptitude, now Chuck Schumer is just flat out lying. I never, ever said that the president should be impeached. He must be confusing me with, I don't know, Mika Brzezinski or something? I have no idea. But I said the president's base would be watching the DACA deal very closely, and they wouldn't stand for amnesty. And you know what? They obviously won't and wouldn't. I also said on this show that the president's enemies want him impeached. I've said that from the beginning. So, Chuck, I suggest you get a better strategy team and you get your facts straight. Don't put words in my mouth unless you're willing to come on the show. We've invited you and defend them. And coming up, more texts reveal an even deeper anti-Trump bias at the FBI. And now the evidence? It's just vanishing. Details next. Oh, just what they needed. Some fresh black eyes for the FBI tonight. DOJ revealing the existence of 50,000 texts between the Bureau's now disgraced agents Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. They are chatty Cathys, aren't they? Among the revelations, former Attorney General Loretta Lynch apparently knew in advance that the FBI planned to clear Hillary Clinton in her email investigation. Clairvoyant is she? But it is perhaps what wasn't included that is most damning. The FBI claiming it has lost 5 months of texts between Strzok and Page. Well, the timing is a little more than curious, don't you think? The missing messages are from December 14, 2016 to May 17, 2017. And why is that day important? Well, it was the day that Robert Mueller was appointed special counsel. I have it on my calendar. Here to react, Congressman Ron DeSantis of Florida, who serves on the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees, and Fox News contributor and Washington Examiner reporter Byron York. Congressman, this has been such a wild news cycle. I mean, keeping track of it has been something, but are we actually to believe that the only texts that were not preserved were those between Strzok and his gal pal Page? Apparently other texts, all the other agents, no problem, but those, no can find.
Well, I think if people believe that that was just a coincidence, then I'd like to sell them some oceanfront property I got out in Arizona. I mean, it doesn't make sense that that would just be an innocent thing. I don't accept the explanation we've been given. I think we need to dig harder. I think Wray's going to have to testify under oath.
Christopher Wray,
the FBI director, in front of the Congress. And think about all the critical events that were going on during this time. You have the Trump transition. You have the Trump inauguration. FBI agents running over to interrogate Michael Flynn for whatever reason. Then you have the Comey when he says, oh, we're doing this big Russia investigation. The firing of Comey. All these things were happening. And you can imagine, based on what we already know with Strzok and Page, they were saying all kinds of things about this, and I think it probably would be really devastating evidence of their bias against Donald Trump.
You can bring in a technical person at the FBI.
Where are the actual hard devices? The devices were FBI devices. Those devices should be produced.
Doesn't this, Byron, remind you of the Hillary Clinton and then the Lois Lerner, that the BlackBerries, they're gone, but then you find them, and then I thought you could never delete text messages, period. You can't. I thought that wasn't even possible.
Well, you know, Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, sent a kind of apologetic note to Congress saying we're going to do everything we can to look for this. We're going to do all the technical things we can do to find this. On the other hand, we still need to see a lot of these texts, if they did indeed cut off on December 14th, 2016. Remember that investigation started, the counterintelligence investigation started in July. So you got texts from July, August, September, October, November, and half of December. There's a lot to see even now.
You know, one of my sources on the Hill tonight said there is an enormous amount that they've already seen that is not public yet. We didn't find out one thing today, that Loretta Lynch, of the Tarmac fame, meeting with the Bill Clinton Tarmac fame, former Attorney General, did know ahead of time.
Yes.
What does that tell you, if anything?
Comey said, I never told anybody.
He testified to that effect, correct?
He testified under oath to that. And then also there's the Strzok text message to Page when Trump sews up the nomination. They say, oh, my gosh, it's going to be Trump Clinton. And Strzok's response to Lisa Page is, well, now we have extra pressure to wind down the Clinton investigation. And so you look at all his other underlying biases, and then you look at that, it stinks to high heaven.
Byron, I want to read a tweet from Ken Delanian at NBC directed at you tonight. This is actually not a big development, all caps, not, in the Trump-Russia probe. It's a pseudo-development in the partisan attempt to discredit that investigation by suggesting that it hinges on the sentiments expressed by an FBI agent rather than the evidence. Byron York, in response to you.
Well, first of all, you have Peter Strzok, who was the lead investigator, not only in the Clinton investigation, but in the Trump-Russia investigation, the two most significant political investigations in many years, who is demoted to the HR department. I mean, it's self-evidently a big deal.
Who's this Ken Delanian? I mean, it sounds like he works for the DNC. Is he like related to Debbie Wasserman Schultz or something? Like, he just sounds ridiculous. Never heard of him before. I don't even know who he is.
Strzok, He was the one that interviewed Cheryl Mills. He interviewed Huma. He was there for Hillary's interview.
Why is he even working at all in the FBI? I mean, the man should have been fired, and he should not be heard from again. I'm sorry, but
I agree.
HR. He's the last person you want in HR.
I mean, you have him. You have Lisa Page. You have
none of these people should be working.
There's some other suggestive parts, even in what we know now. I've been told that they will say to each other, "We need to switch over to iMessage," suggesting that instead of their FBI-issued Samsung phones, they maybe had personal phones as well. They also, there's a reference.
It's only Apple devices, iMessage, obviously.
There's a message in which one says, I sent you an email to your Gmail account, and I think it went to your Verizon account. You need to delete that. So they were clearly conducting business of some sort.
Whispering sweet nothings about the investigation.
Well, now, we also know they were having an affair. So how much of that is their secrecy?
There was a security risk for what they were doing. They were susceptible to blackmail.
Okay, guys, really quickly. Axios is reporting tonight that Attorney General Jeff Sessions, at the public urging of President Trump, has been pressuring FBI Director Wray to dump the Deputy Director, Andrew McCabe, for a whole variety of reasons, which we've already talked about. But Wray threatened to resign if his pal McCabe was removed. Sounds like you have a lot of people to remove then. If the Attorney General is telling the FBI, get rid of... I mean, doesn't the Attorney General have a right to... He's the head of the department.
McCabe needs to go. There's so many problems with him, but just get a fresh start. What's wrong with that? That's
what is
right
Wray
advice.
afraid of, Byron?
Well, this is part of a larger Sessions effort to get them to clean house at the FBI, which absolutely is needed. And there are some people in Congress who believe that Wray has been too defensive about the FBI.
Yeah, he had a great reputation. He goes in, and where do you go to get reputation back, gentlemen? By the way, the FBI isn't the only part of the swamp that needs draining, a good draining. A department in the Trump administration is quietly trying to place illegal immigrants all across the country. We'll expose it. We thought we had gotten rid of it with Obama, but it's still here. Up next. Now, this is going to shock you to think this is happening under the watch of one of the best presidents on immigration, which is President Trump. But according to Judicial Watch, the federal government has been quietly relocating illegal immigrants around the country on commercial flights. The president of the National Border Patrol Council, Brandon Judd, said that's because Obama's administration holdovers are still running major agencies. He joins us now via Skype from Malta, Montana. Also joining us from San Diego is immigration advocate Enrique Morones from San Diego, as I said. Gentlemen, it's great to see both of you. Brandon, let's start with you. Now, this is a program which took place and began under President Obama. And it was initially passed, I think, in 2008, and it eventually was like child trafficking concerns motivated the idea that you can't immediately deport minors back to non-contiguous countries. That's different, however, from relocating them across the country on commercial flights, correct?
It is, and it actually expanded from 2008 to releasing anybody that claimed a credible fear that said that they didn't want to go back to their country, and we were releasing all individuals that crossed the border illegally.
Enrique, why is this the way to enforce American immigration law on the books? In other words, to me it seems like a magnet. If you tell people, if you get across the border, we will protect you, we will send you to a sponsor. Is Enrique there? I just see a truck. Otherwise, Enrique's changed. And we'll just send you all over the country to various locations, and you'll be able to stay. There he is. So what of that, Enrique?
Well, first of all, of course, it's not true. That's not what is taking place. In the last 6 years, there's been less migrants crossing the border, especially from Mexico. Now it's mostly Central Americans. And it's very, very difficult to get asylum. Very difficult. Most don't get asylum. So it's not a matter of just saying, I want asylum and you get in, like the Border Patrol Union likes to state. If that were happening, then the Border Patrol Union is greatly responsible.
Right, they never go to court. Well, Enrique, look, you're smart. You've been doing this for a long time.
Go to court. Yeah, about half of them do go to court. I know a lot more about this than you.
Oh, okay.
About half of them do go to court. I've been there.
Let's play tag here.
With these cases, on many occasions,
How
We
many?
had
What's the
case of
percentage of
2000
individuals who've been ordered deported show up at their hearings? Go ahead, Enrique. You know so much.
About 55%. About 55% of the
Brandon.
people in these cases that you're referring
Laura,
to.
They never
Laura,
show
that's-
up. That is a complete lie. They do not show up for their
Come on, it's
deportation
Fox
hearings.
News.
Brandon, go ahead.
Who's the liar here? We're talking to Fox
Laura,
News.
Then why are you on?
Laura,
Why are you on with us if you're going to call us a liar? Why are you on a network that's filled with liars?
Because
I asked you.
people
Hold
need
on
to
a second,
stand up to
Brandon.
the
No,
lies.
no,
People need
Enrique.
to
Just
stand
one
up to the
question.
lies, Laura. That's why.
Brandon, I asked you a simple question, and you obfuscated and went to another point, which is cute, but it really doesn't work on this show. I asked you a question. How is
I answered it.
How is it enforcing U.S. law to say if you cross the border illegally, you will most assuredly, unless you are a known felon, you will be released after a short period of time to a sponsor, and you will be flown via commercial airline with an HHS sponsor escort to your location of choice. And my question was, how is that comporting with the rule of law? Now you may answer, and then Brandon will get a shot.
It's not happening. It's very rare exceptions that takes place. So it's important that you know the facts, that you speak the facts. Don't talk about exceptions. Talk about the reality. 40% drop in undocumented migration in the last 5 years, long before Trump.
Okay, well, you're a drop. We have 621% increase in Southwest border family unit apprehensions from April 2017 to December 2017. We had 1,126 family units crossing in April. December, we had 8,121 just in 1 month. 1 month, 8,121 families crossing the border in anticipation, undoubtedly, of an amnesty. Brandon, I did not give you enough time here, but if Enrique might let you speak for 5 seconds. Go ahead, Brandon.
Laura, I can personally tell you, I did a shift patrolling the border today. I can personally tell you we let go nearly all those individuals that crossed under the Obama administration. Now, it's been much better under the Trump administration, but you still have those Obama holdovers that are forcing us to process the illegal aliens that we catch and set them up so that they can then turn around and release them. And that's got to change. And I am hopeful that it's going to change because we know that President Trump is tough on immigration. He just has to deal with those Obama holdovers. And once that happens,
let me play for you a soundbite from a flight attendant who called into my radio show today. Let's listen really quick.
There were 4 of them. They took up 4 seats in first class. Young women and young children. They all have on brand new clothes, 1 bag of all brand new belongings, no identification whatsoever.
Now, we had to cut that short, but she went on to say they had an escort with them, and she didn't know where they ended up ultimately. But this happens time and time again. She's a longtime flight attendant. She knew what she was talking about. Enrique, really quickly, you can respond.
Sure. Why don't you ask Chris Harris? He's a Border Patrol Union guy. Ask him why he shot a migrant and killed a migrant. This is what's really taking place along the border. So you take these exceptional cases and try to make it sound like it's happening all the time. These are rare exceptions. The people are forced to flee, much of it because of U.S. interference in those countries. The U.S. should be much more welcoming. They're not even in the top 20 countries when it comes to welcoming migrants.
You don't want a border, though, right? I mean, you just don't want a border at all. I mean,
I do want a border.
It's more honest.
I do want a border.
It's more
I want a
honest to
humane
say,
border.
I don't want a border. What's a humane border?
I do. I do.
A border that's Swiss cheese? What is that?
I don't know. That's not what I want. I want humane, intelligent borders.
This is a cliche. That doesn't mean I want a humane border. What does that mean? You cannot answer the question.
People should be able to come in through the front door. There should be a line for them to get into. There's no line for them.
Yeah,
the U.S. has these policies, invades foreign lands,
learn the meaning of the
demands
word legal.
the U.S. the
By
drugs.
The way, how is this all affecting you and your community? This is shocking. Details of immigration policy run amok from the head of an MS-13 gang task force. Up next. Now, contrary to what Enrique just said, we do have a problem with quietly relocating illegal immigrants all around the country, right near here in Washington, D.C., even under President Trump. Now, for details on how these immigration policies affect you and your community, we turn to Jay Lanham, who's the director of the Northern Virginia Regional Gang Task Force. Jay, you were so great on radio today, I had to bring you on TV because you were awesome. Tell us what MS-13, specifically a Salvadoran legal immigrant gang, has done to a previously safe community of middle-class, upper-middle-class people, Northern Virginia. Tell us.
Well, obviously the gang activity has increased the level of violence and criminal activity, period, in the Northern Virginia neighborhoods. You know, they show this image of power and respect, when in reality, It's not power and respect.
But what are their tactics? MS-13. What is their tactics? What do they do?
Well, their tactics is about having respect. So if you don't respect them, then they're going to retaliate with violence, and it's going to be pretty brutal violence.
Where do they recruit people?
So they go after kids, especially kids from the Latino communities, especially the unaccompanied minors who are brought here.
What we just talked about. They're being sent via commercial airlines all across the country to, quote, sponsors. By the way, a lot of the sponsors themselves are illegal immigrants. They live in those communities, and the kids, they're in a new place. And I feel terrible for the kids. They're in a new place. They don't speak the language. A lot of them, sadly, are illiterate in their own language. You said that on radio.
Yep.
They come here, and the people are like, I'll be your friend, I'll be your father, I'll be your... And suddenly they're in it.
Exactly. They're very vulnerable, and the gangs know it. And
I read recently about decapitations. Again, some of these are reported and some are not.
Correct.
I read recently about decapitations. Again, some of these are reported and some are not.
Correct.
Decapitations, yes. Manassas, Virginia. Again, Manassas, Virginia, a quiet bedroom community in Washington, D.C. When I came here 15, 20 years ago, it's like a different place.
Yes. Yes, the activity in gangs has increased exponentially. The ruthless, brutal, violent crime that they're carrying out now, it's much worse than it was 20 years ago when we first saw the gangs emerging.
And it's not just MS-13. There's Florenzia 13. There's the Latin Kings. L.A., Chicago has these problems. Yes. What do you do? They're here now. These illegal immigrants, and this is an illegal immigrant-based gang.
Yes.
What do you do? I mean, you find them, you try to deport them, but this takes a long time and a lot of your manpower.
Yeah, we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem. We have to have programs that intervene and prevent these kids from joining the gangs in the first place. And the platform that we work off of is enforcement and intervention, prevention, and education. And if you don't have both, we're not going to be successful.
No, I mean, we have so much extra money to be spending prevention, education. Our American citizens need prevention and education. This is shocking. Thank you for the work you're doing. And some newspapers are better than others in reporting. Actually, the Washington Post has done a pretty good job of reporting this. But we're talking Gaithersburg. We're talking about Manassas. We're talking about Arlington, Virginia. That's like, you can run there from here.
Yes.
That's how close it is. Thank you for the work you're doing. And by the way, a major network does a story about the artistry of some of the worst terrorists in the world. I kid you not. Parents of a 9/11 victim respond next. Once again, the left and the media, they seem to have more sympathy for terrorist killers than their victims. The latest example comes from CBS Sunday Morning with a story on an art exhibit, now brace yourselves, featuring the works of Gitmo prisoners.
To me, this is the most important work in this show because it's the most clear link we have to a mind of someone capable of terrorism.
To me, they give hope because we all have these things in common.
What? Not buying it. Well, Alan, Maureen, Santora, who lost their firefighter son, Christopher, in the World Trade Center on 9/11, with us now for a very different reaction from that 9/11 mother. And there's Christopher, handsome young man. You guys, both of you, I saw this and my blood boiled. My old producer, Lee Habib, brought it to my attention over the weekend. I had to stop myself. I'd love for either of you to respond.
Well, I was particularly disturbed that when they came to our house and they interviewed us, that the only thing that they put on the TV was that we were in objection to the art being shown and that we objected to some of it possibly being sold. We objected to a number of things. First of all, we were very upset that nobody in the college thought it responsible to reach out to the families about this art. This is a public institution. We pay taxes in New York City and New York State. We fund this institution. And so we are funding this art being shown.
And Al, and of course your wife's talking about the John Jay College of Criminal Justice, where ironically a lot of the firefighters and police and their families who responded on 9/11 attended.
Exactly.
That's another insult here. But I think who in their right mind would have thought this, not far away, by the way, from Ground Zero, that this would have been a good idea? Al, go ahead.
I have absolutely no idea. This is a slap in the face to all Americans, especially to the families of the 343 and the 23 police officers that died at the World Trade Center. Many of the first responders are graduates of John Jay, as I am. I'm an alumni. I received my master's and my bachelor's at John Jay. And this is a college of criminal justice. And to put this kind of a display, a show by the perpetrators of 9/11 is a slap in the face to everyone. And not to ask or even bother to notify the families that such a thing was going to happen. I found out by chance through somebody who had heard about it. And then CBS had contacted us and put us on for about 30 seconds or 20 seconds and really didn't cover the outrage that we feel and many of the other families. Many of the higher echelon in the fire department who died on 9/11 are John Jay graduates. And I'm sure that every one of those families are especially hurting.
It's a total outrage. We're going to stay on this issue. Alan, Maureen, thank you for your thoughts on this, and we'll be right back. Stunning. All right, that's about all the time we have tonight, but stay tuned. We have another great hour ahead. Shannon Bream broadcasting live from Jerusalem, Israel. She has an exclusive interview with Vice President Pence, and it's awesome. And lucky her, because I love going to Israel. And we're going to stay on all these issues we hit tonight.